Good morning, and it's indeed an honor and a privilege to be here once again at the Congressional Prayer Breakfast. You know, we've gathered in this spot since 1953, at the beginning of each year, to come together as Democrats and Republicans to come together and fellowship and worship and pray for a successful term of Congress. I think one of the most important things that this event and numerous events throughout the House, both House and Senate, do is brings each of us together, Democrat and Republican. And I think there's no better way that we show that other than the two co-chairs of this fantastic prayer breakfast, Congresswoman Lucy McBath and Congressman Tim Walberg. Now, you mentioned in your introduction that you guys have Harleys. Do we have a question? Can I get a ride on a Harley one day? And in turn, everybody knows I had that yellow Camaro. I will, in turn, give you a ride in the yellow Camaro. But it's indeed an honor and a privilege to be here and to be with everybody here as we begin this term of Congress. I also want to welcome Speaker McCarthy and Minority Leader Jeffers. Now, you will recall a couple weeks ago how I was a little bit premature in calling for Speaker McCarthy to step aside and let's get somebody else in there to be Speaker. You learn in politics to never give up. Speaker McCarthy, you did that. It took 15 rounds of votes, but you became Speaker of the House. And here's what is good about our system here in this country. During that whole 15 rounds of votes, may I say, the American people, and there's a term that was used, and quite frankly, it is pretty accurate when it comes to this. The American people got to see how the sausage was made. Now that does sound like a gross term, but in reality, they did. They saw the deals. They saw they saw the talking. They saw the partnerships. That's the one thing they saw is they saw the partnerships. It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican. The most important thing we can do as leaders is put aside our personal feelings toward one another. We may not like one another, but we shouldn't have to hate one another. And that's what's happened over the last couple of years. There is so much polarization that goes on. Just because you and I disagree on an issue, we should hate each other. And that's not the case. That's not the case. You know, I think about that example, and this goes back about 21, 22 years ago in the administration of President Bush, another fellow Texan there. But at the very beginning of his administration, he invited Senator Kennedy and his family to the White House for a movie. Now, being invited to the White House to watch a movie with the President of the United States is a big deal. And at the end of that evening, Senator Kennedy thanked the President and Mrs. Bush for their hospitality and the great evening that they shared. A handwritten letter was actually delivered to the White House from Senator Kennedy, thanking him or thanking President Bush for that wonderful evening. Now, fast forward to the fall of 2001, September actually, and the morning of September the 11th. Mrs. Bush was on the Hill, actually with Senator Kennedy, lobbying for the education bill when that tragic day unfolded that we lost so many lives. That day actually, Mrs. Bush actually was given a painting by Senator Kennedy in appreciation again for that wonderful evening that they shared several months earlier at the White House. Now, she didn't get this painting for a few more months. It had to go through screening, given everything that had happened in our nation at the time. And if you ever visit the Bush Presidential Center in Dallas, you will actually see that on display, and you'll see a little bit of discolorization to that painting, and that's because of the radiation screening it had to go through in order to get to the First Lady. But just a few weeks later, there was a bill introduced into Congress, the No Child Left Behind bill, the Education Standards, or the recertification of the Education Standards Act. Whose name was on that bill? Senator Kennedy. Now, many people have said that they don't think that bill, and even, quite frankly, that name would have been on that bill had it not been for that night at the White House Theater. And again, that's showing bipartisanship. It's showing that we can work together. And we can put aside our differences. We can put aside the hatred. There's so much, like I mentioned, there's so much of that going on in our nation. It's time to put that aside and do the work of the American people. And in the introduction, Lucy and Tim, you both talked about the numerous prayer groups that are meeting here at the Capitol every week. I think a lot about my church back home in Texas. We have a Wednesday night prayer group. We have a study group after worship service on Sunday. But again, what those groups do and what they accomplish is they bring you together and you learn more about the individual that you may see on an everyday basis, but you learn more about how that person works, what makes them tick. And I think that's so important here in Congress. The job we have here in our nation's capital is not easy. Is not easy. But what I am convinced of is that working together, there's nothing at all that we cannot accomplish. It is endless. We can accomplish anything if we put aside the hatred and start working together and start respecting one another and start caring for one another. We do that, we can accomplish anything in our nation. Again, thank you so much for the invitation. And again, it's an honor to be here with you this morning. Thank you all very much.